historical information included statements by Mr. Bakhtar that were not consistent with observations made. This includes the fact that the person who actually carried Andrea Nelson into the emergency room felt that she was cold to touch and already cyanotic. That is, due to lack of oxygen, there was a change in coloration to her lips and other portions of her body. This was inconsistent with the history provided by Mr. Bakhtar that she had just become unresponsive in a car within 20 to 30 minutes or so of arriving in the emergency room. Additionally, there are some suspicious findings in the autopsy, one of which included a bruise on the inside of the lower lip, which was automatically attributed by the coroner's office to being a complication of intubation. However, when a person is intubated, and I'll try to do a demonstration of it, the mouth is open and a laryngoscope is put in back across the tongue, and if there's any bruising, it's to the upper lip as pressure is applied to open up the airway. It's not to the lower lip, plus the fact that there is bruising on the inside and no evidence of impact on the outside is consistent with pressure being applied rather than any type of blow to the lower lip, and certainly not consistent with the attempts at intubation. In addition, there were pinpoint hemorrhages on the surfaces of her lungs, which are consistent with some upper airway obstruction, such as a smothering or suffocation. But it is suspicious in somebody who allegedly is dying of a drug overdose, because it's not a common finding. Matter of fact, it's not a finding in drug overdoses where people either die of a sudden cardiac event or of respiratory failure. They can't breathe, they stop breathing.
Those would seem to be enough to make the sheriff coroner want to rule this as a suspicious death and at least leave the file open. Wouldn't that be?
Yes, that was actually the final sent letter to the chief of police of Newport Beach Police Department, was that I do hope the investigation continues and that Mr. Bakhtar's story will be questioned again. It certainly is suspicious, and it needs definite investigation by competent people.
Did the police department there ever get back to you to ask you any more questions about that letter?
No.
They never responded?
No, they did not. Seem odd if they were truly interested in investigating a suspicious death. My basic opinion is that they want this case to go away.
And why would the Newport Beach police want this case to go away?
Number one, it looks bad for them if they investigated it or did a poor job of investigation, and subsequent investigation shows what they denied. There's always the possibility of police involvement. Anytime drugs are involved, there's usually significant money involved. To my knowledge, the Orange County Sheriff's Crime Lab has a great toxicology department.
So if those are accurate, and she had a fatal amount of cocaine in her system, and Bakhtar was allegedly the only person with her for the last few hours before she died, wouldn't he be a prime suspect?
He certainly would be a prime suspect in providing the drug, if not actually administering the drug. The other possibility is that cocaine is occasionally cut or mixed with methamphetamine because they're both stimulants, and so it could be there was some methamphetamine in it. Benzoyl eccognine, and benzoyl eccognine is a metabolic byproduct. In other words, when cocaine gets degraded, it becomes benzoyl eccognine.
So would that help indicate to you how long it had been degrading in her body?
Well, it happens very quickly that cocaine will get hydrolyzed and become benzoyl eccognine. These levels would be consistent with a very recent exposure, or there would have had to have been multiple exposures.
I mean, she probably got the cocaine from somebody after she left her mother's home that evening around 8, something like that.
Yes, with these levels, she would have had to have been given or taken the cocaine, I would estimate within an hour of death.
In the autopsy report that I read, the part that wasn't redacted, I didn't seem to see a body core temperature taken. Is that a normal thing to do in a suspicious death, to establish a body core temperature?
In some jurisdictions, it's common to do a body core temperature, but it's always done at the scene, which is sooner to death than the autopsy. Investigator responding to the scene felt that there was something suspicious, then he or she could have taken a body core temperature.
And did the hospital take a body core temperature after their described heroics?
No, they did not.
And yet they thought it was suspicious death.
Yes.
So wouldn't that have been a prudent thing for them to do, is to take a body core temperature?
Well, it's usually a prudent thing for any emergency department to take a body core temperature on patients that come in, or at least an oral temperature if they're conscious. However, my experience here in Southern California over the last 15 years or so is that is the one vital sign that is most frequently missing from records, that no temperature is ever taken.
And what can that body core temperature tell them?
The body core temperature to the emergency department can let them know whether or not they're dealing with hypothermia as the reason for lack of consciousness, or why the person no longer has a heart rate. It certainly is of value to the investigators to know the body core temperature, because it will give them an estimate as to time of death. I think that the fact that he felt that she was cool and was already showing signs of cyanosis would indicate that she had been dead for at least half an hour, perhaps longer.
So what time did the hospital report her arrival?
The reports say 23:33 hours on the 27th. That would be 27 minutes before. People with cocaine overdoses do survive if they get to the hospital in time.
So the fact that she was already cold to the touch, what does that say to you?
Well, it certainly, cold to touch is a subjective thing, and it varies from one person to another. But if she were truly cold to touch, that would indicate that she had been dead for, I would estimate, at least 30 minutes or so. Plus the fact that there was no response to the hospital-given resuscitation drugs would be consistent with that also. And there were autopsy findings that made it suspicious. And there were autopsy findings that made it suspicious. And there were autopsy findings that made it suspicious. And there were autopsy findings that made it suspicious.